Hello, everybody, and welcome back to SparkofVintage. Today, we're making with the August 2025 Sonnets Garden Blooms Makers Box. We have some gorgeous papers from the Painted Photographer, Roycycled Decoupage Paper, paint from DIY, and Fusion Mineral Paint, as well as milk paint samples from Sweet Pickins Milk Paint. Our first two projects today are going to focus primarily on the Fusion Mineral Paint in raw silk. I found these beautiful wood frames at the Goodwill bins, and they didn't need much, just a little bit of a touch-up. They're perfect for hanging on the wall just by themselves, but I decided to frame one of Connie's beautiful papers that came in the box this month. So I applied a single coat of the raw silk Fusion Mineral Paint and then waxed the frames with the Bronze Age metallic wax from Finnabar. Once I was able to get the wax coating on, it just took a simple single coat. I trimmed Connie's paper, Queen Anne, from the Painted Photographer, and then fitted it on a piece of heavy cardstock so that I could put it into the frame. I used a very light bonding adhesive so that you could remove the picture or change it out or put it into a different frame down the line. It was a very simple flip, but I loved the nostalgic and vintage look of all of the pieces, especially grouped together. I found these two wood milk signs at the Goodwill bins at different times, and they were in a serious need of a makeover. The varnish on them had kind of browned out a little bit, and they didn't look as contemporary. So I sanded them down back to the raw wood and then used the raw silk paint from Fusion Mineral Paint in order to give them their first coat of white. I thought it was a much fresher color, and we were on our way. I painted the back of the pictures with cast iron. I had received that paint in a previous maker's box, and I always like to finish my projects on the back side as well. I think it gives it a more polished touch. I used the crockery stamps from IOD, and they just happened to have a fresh cream one, and then the beautiful lettering from IOD as well in order to spell out milk on one of the bottles. I used my Tim Holtz numerical stamps in order to number those bottles because I always seem to find milk bottles that have a processing number on them, and I thought it would be a great touch. I finished off the caps with Tim Holtz's Distress Pewter paint in order to give them a little bit of that milk cap topping. And I thought they came out super adorable. My next project was inspired by these little wood pieces that I've had in my stash for a while, and when I saw the Painted Photographer's papers for this month, I was instantly inspired and saw paintbrushes in them. I was also inspired by those little dishwasher magnets that you see that you can flip over, and one side says the dishes are dirty and the other side the dishes are clean. And I thought, wouldn't that be fun if we could do that with these little palettes in order to kind of create little signs for our craft room. So as you can see, I'm using this water technique where you can wet the sides of the rice paper and kind of tear at the edges in order to get an unfinished kind of crafty edge. Now, this was my experiment with Sylvia from Backyard Brushes technique of wetting the paper and then kind of giving them the burnt edges. What you don't see is that the paper and the fire got out of control because I was sitting directly under a fan. And so that was about all I had left of my decoupage papers. But I thought it came out kind of cool So I decided to mount them to the paddles and then add some stamping to the front and back of each one of the pieces so that you could flip your sign depending whether you're in or out of your craft room. Well, I've been holding on to these paper mache pumpkins for quite a while. And when I saw the beautiful color from Fusion Mineral Paint in that Homestead blue, I thought, why not have a teal pumpkin? He's not quite orange yet. We're not quite into the October time of year yet. So let's do a transitional color. I also had some leftover transfers from IOD, the Milo's pages. As you can see, that's a favorite transfer set of mine. So I took what was left of the sheet and just decided to do a scattering of beautiful flowers all around the pumpkin. Sonnet always includes a little present for us in the box, and this month our bonus was this gorgeous napkin. I took a chance hoping that this napkin would cover this entire foam pumpkin. I got this pumpkin, I'm sure, at the bins, and it was one of the ones that you usually see at Michael's or at one of the craft stores. Unfortunately, I ran out of the very littlest of space. The napkin didn't quite cover the whole thing, but I had a little gap there, and it occurred to me that I had a leftover transfer from one of my IOD Christmas collections. I think that's going to be the fairy garden, and it just seemed to blend well with the beautiful colors that were in the stamp. I touched up the stem with a little bit of brown paint and then added some metallic wax from Finnabar in the ruby, fire ruby color. I thought that just matched the rest of the pumpkin so beautifully and allowed me to fill in some of the blank spaces where the napkin didn't fill. Then I went on to work with this beautiful galvanized metal garden tote. I used Roycycled Decoupage Papers, and the minute I saw them this month, I knew they were the right thing to use for this great tote. I put my base coat down again with the raw silk Fusion Mineral Paint, and I love this paint because it's a one coat paint. It has the sealer already built in, and it's perfect for decoupage. So these beautiful papers from Roycycle in Botanical Curiosity and Field and Feather, I thought were just the perfect papers for this tote. I measured out the sides. Everything would fit perfectly. The dimensions of the decoupage paper matched exactly with what I needed for the galvanized tote. So away we went with trimming our edges and getting ready for the project. I used my Tim Holtz Distress Collage Medium to apply the decoupage paper to the tote. Now I had already kind of created a little bit of a groove with the decoupage paper when I measured it out, so I knew it would be a good fit, especially on those curved edges that are a bit of a challenge. The sides were a breeze and the paper went on beautifully. As you can see, there's so much layering and detailing to all of Roycycle's papers that it's always such a pleasure to work with her papers and to do projects because there's always so much dimension and texture to all of her pieces. I used our DIY green color of the month in Eden and went ahead and touched that up as well on the handle while I was waiting for the rest of the galvanized tote to dry. While the handle was drying, I used soapstone from a previous Sonnets box in order to kind of touch up a little bit of that galvanized gray on the inside of the tote. I just wanted to add a little bit more protection and protect it from rusting, especially if it was going to be used outdoors. Then it was time to just sand down the edges and trim up any loose little fibers that were sticking out of the papers. And then it was garden ready. Well, that's a wrap. And I just want to thank you so much for joining us today at Spark of Vintage. And a very special thank you to Inky Spirits for the use of her gorgeous garden. You can subscribe to your own maker's box at sonnetsgardenblooms.com. Follow the link in the playlist below to see all of our amazing makers. Thanks again, and we'll see you next week.